People always ask why I stuck with the graveyard shift. Truth is, I like the quiet. Less people, less drama. Just me, the hum of fluorescent lights, and the rattle of distant trains echoing through empty tunnels. I was a night guard for one of the older subway stations in the city, Lexington Terminal. You probably haven't heard of it, unless you live in Midtown or take the Green Line after 10 p.m. The station's practically forgotten. Most of the entrances are locked after rush hour, and only a few trains stop there late at night. It's the kind of place with peeling tile walls, dripping pipes, and that permanent stench of mold and metal. Management stuck me there alone with a flashlight, an ancient CCTV system, and a walkie-talkie that mostly picked up static. My job? Simple. Walk the platforms every hour, check the maintenance tunnels for trespassers, and keep a log. That's it. I wasn't even supposed to carry a weapon. Just observe and report. That's what they told me. The first few weeks were uneventful. Boring, even. I brought a thermos of coffee, listened to podcasts, did my rounds. Sometimes I'd catch teenagers sneaking down for graffiti, or old drunks looking for a place to sleep. Nothing dangerous. But something changed about 3 weeks in. I was doing my routine walk past the locked stairwell to the northbound track, over by the defunct vending machines, when I heard it. A voice. Faint, like someone whispering just below the surface of water. I froze, thinking maybe someone had followed me in. I killed the flashlight and just listened. Help! It was distant, barely audible, but real. I turned slowly toward the source, the far end of the platform, where the maintenance door leads to the old service tunnel. That tunnel had been sealed off for years, ever since a cave-in took out part of the lower line. No one should be down there. Ever. The whisper came again. Please, help me. My skin went cold. I clicked on my radio. Dispatch, this is Guard 04 at Lexington. I think I heard someone in the sealed tunnel. Requesting confirmation if anyone is scheduled for work tonight. Static. Then a faint buzz. No response. Typical. I hesitated at the tunnel door. It was padlocked, just like always. Thick rusted chains. I even tugged them to be sure. Solid. Still, the voice had come from right behind it, I swear. I told myself it had to be a prank. Echoes can play tricks on you underground. Sound travels weird. Maybe someone topside, shouting through a vent shaft? Yeah, that had to be it. Still, I logged the incident. 10:47 p.m., possible trespasser, sealed tunnel. No visual confirmation. I didn't sleep when I got home that morning. The next night, I went in a little on edge. I didn't tell anyone about the voice, not officially. You start talking about hearing whispers in a sealed tunnel, and suddenly you're the unstable guard. First on the chopping block if they need to trim the budget. So I kept quiet. But I also brought a small handheld recorder. Nothing fancy, just a cheap little thing I used to mess around with in college. I clipped it to my belt and turned it on before my first patrol, around 10 p.m. That night was dead silent. Not a single train passed through. Sometimes the schedule's light, especially during maintenance, but this was too quiet. Even the usual station sounds, distant clanks, wind gusts through the tunnels, humming electricals, were just gone. At 1:06 a.m., I walked past the maintenance tunnel again. Still locked. Still rusted shut. I paused. No voices this time. Just silence. I stood there for maybe a full minute, trying to shake off the unease crawling up my spine. Then something made me glance over at the track level. A train was pulling in. Or, I thought it was. The lights flickered down the tunnel, the unmistakable glow of approaching headlights. The third rail buzzed to life. I even felt the faint rumble under my boots. But the platform clock said 1:07 a.m. And no trains were scheduled until nearly 2 o'clock. I stepped back, watching. The lights got brighter, closer, but then suddenly blinked out. Just like that, gone. No train. No sound. No breeze. Nothing. I stood there in the dark with my flashlight shaking in my hand, trying to convince myself I hadn't imagined it. Maybe a power surge? But the rest of the lights hadn't flickered. Only the tunnel ones. I made another call on the radio. Again, no response. Just static. Back in the control room, I played the recording back, just to prove I hadn't lost it. For the first hour, it was just the usual footsteps, distant drips, and the occasional creak. Then, at 1 hour 6 minutes and 42 seconds, the tape picked up something else. A sound that didn't come from me. A dragging noise. Like something wet and heavy scraping across concrete. Then a whisper, barely louder than breath. "You're not supposed to be here." I paused the tape. There was no voice like that on the platform. I didn't hear it in real time. But it was on the recording. Clear as day. I still don't know how I made it through the rest of that shift. The next few nights, I kept the recorder running. I even started marking times in a little notebook. Nothing happened the following shift, or the one after that. I'd almost convinced myself it had been stress, maybe even a prank someone played months ago that the acoustics decided to reanimate on tape. Then came Friday. Fridays are weird in the subway. The daytime crowd's frantic, the evening rush smells like beer and cologne, and by midnight, it's just a few late-night workers and ghosts of the city. I started my shift at 10 like always. At 11:15, while doing my second walkthrough, I noticed something different near the north exit stairs, the ones permanently chained up. There was a wet footprint on the tiles. Just one. Bare, human. No shoe tread. It looked fresh, like someone had stepped out of a puddle. But there were no puddles anywhere near. I leaned down to inspect it. The edges were smeared, like whoever made it had twisted their foot while turning. As I stood up, I felt watched. You ever get that feeling where your spine tightens like it knows something your eyes haven't caught yet? I looked around. Empty. I made my way back to the control room, but something tugged at me. I flipped on the old CCTV monitor and rewound the platform feed to about 11 p.m. The footage was grainy and jittery. Half the cameras hadn't worked in years, but I could make out the platform. Then, at 11:03, someone walked into frame. A man. Alone. Wearing a subway maintenance uniform from decades ago, dark blue, with one of those old patches that haven't been used since the early 90s. He walked with a limp, dragging one foot behind him. I watched as he shuffled past the edge of the frame and disappeared off camera, toward the sealed tunnel. That shouldn't have been possible. No one can get down here without a key, and I sure as hell hadn't seen anyone walk past me. I checked every entry point after that. Still locked. Still chained. Still secure. I rewound again. Same thing. 11:03, dragging foot. Vanished into the shadows. That night, I stayed inside the control room until dawn. The platform lights flickered twice, and my radio made a high-pitched feedback squeal that nearly blew out my ear, but I didn't move. I didn't even blink when I heard the voice again, faint and hoarse, like it was standing right outside the room. "Why are you still here?" I told myself I needed answers. The next day, after sleeping maybe 4 hours with the lights on and a baseball bat by the bed, I went digging. First stop, City Records. Lexington Terminal had been around since the 1940s, but the lower tunnels, the ones sealed off now, had been added later, part of an expansion project in the late 70s. There had been a collapse in '83, a support beam failure during a night shift. 3 workers were down there when it happened. Only one body was ever recovered. That was enough to make my skin crawl. I asked the clerk if I could see any personnel files or incident reports. She looked at me like I'd asked for nuclear codes, but pointed me to a battered microfilm reader in the corner. I spent 3 hours scrolling through old maintenance logs and department memos. And then I found it. Name: Leonard H. Briggs. Position: Tunnel Maintenance Supervisor. Status: Deceased, presumed lost during tunnel collapse, 1983. Final note: last seen during night shift. Was not scheduled to be on duty. Incident classification: Unauthorized presence, internal review only. That phrase stuck with me. Unauthorized presence. Like even back then, something about him being there didn't add up. There was a photo attached. Black and white, grainy, but unmistakable. A tall man in an old transit uniform. Thick mustache. Tired eyes. The same man from the CCTV footage. I felt sick. That night, I almost didn't go back to work. But calling in sick wasn't really an option. We were already short-staffed, and the idea of explaining why I was scared of an empty subway platform felt pathetic. Still, I brought two things with me, a printout of Leonard's photo, and a thermos full of coffee laced with enough caffeine to keep me wired till sunrise. At 2:22 a.m., just as I was finishing my last patrol, I saw him again. Not on the monitors. In person. He was standing at the far end of the platform, by the old tunnel door. Perfectly still. Not looking at me, just waiting. I should have run. But instead I stepped forward. "Leonard?" I asked. He turned his head, just slightly. Enough for me to see his face. The left side was gone. Not fresh, not bloody, just deteriorated, like he'd been caught between time and earth and decay. His mouth opened, as if to speak. But then he stepped backward, and vanished. Not walked away. Not ran. Just blinked out of sight. I didn't scream. But I did run straight back to the control room, locked the door, and stared at the monitor until dawn. After seeing Leonard, seeing what was left of him, I knew I wasn't just imagining things. And this wasn't a ghost story you tell to spook rookies on their first shift. There was something happening down there, and it wasn't finished with me. Saturday night came, and I showed up to work with my phone camera mounted on my chest, like a knockoff body cam. I didn't care if it looked paranoid. I wanted proof. I needed to know I wasn't losing my mind. At 12:37 a.m., during my third patrol, the power dipped. Not just the lights flickering. The whole station seemed to groan, like it was breathing. You ever hear a building exhale? That's what it felt like. A deep, slow rumble that made my bones feel hollow. Then came the sound again, dragging. Wet. Deliberate. But this time, it wasn't coming from the tunnel. It was coming from behind me. I spun around. The corridor behind the northbound platform was dark, lights all dead. Something was moving in the shadows, slow, uneven steps, a limp. But heavier than Leonard. Bigger. Like flesh being dragged over tile. I pointed my flashlight, hand shaking so hard the beam bounced off the walls like a strobe. And then I saw it. It was human-shaped, mostly. But taller. Too tall. The head scraped the low ceiling. Its skin was pale and loose, like wet paper stretched over a mannequin. And its face. I can't explain its face. It wasn't deformed, it was unfinished. Like someone had started carving a person but quit halfway through. No eyes. No mouth. Just indentations where features should have been. It stopped when the light hit it. Not like it was scared, like it was curious. I backed away, my boots scraping against the floor. That tiny sound made it move. It lunged, not fast, not clumsy either. It was smooth. Intentional. Like it didn't need to rush because it already knew how this ended. I ran. I don't remember how far or where. I just know I ended up behind a locked maintenance gate, panting, flashlight dead, chest cam still rolling. And then, silence. Except for the breathing. Not mine. It was breathing. Heavy, slow. Just beyond the bars. I pressed myself against the wall, praying it couldn't squeeze through. After a few seconds, the breathing stopped. When I finally got the nerve to peek around the corner, it was gone. No footsteps. No drag marks. Nothing. Just a damp, smeared handprint on the wall. The video was still recording. When I played it back later, the screen flickered just before the creature appeared, and the audio picked up a whisper, one I hadn't heard at the time. "Don't follow the echoes." I didn't quit. I should have. Any sane person would have walked away after that night. But something about Lexington Terminal had sunk into me. The voices, the figures, the impossible things moving through the dark, it wasn't just haunting me. It was studying me. Sunday night came. I didn't wear the chest cam. I didn't bring the recorder. No tools. No gadgets. Just a flashlight, a metal crowbar I'd stashed in my locker, and Leonard's photo folded in my back pocket. The shift started quiet. Almost too quiet. No trains came. The digital schedule board froze at 12 a.m. The CCTV system looped static like a broken VHS. And the air, it smelled different. Less like mold and rust, more like burnt plastic and soil. Like something had clawed its way up, not down. At 1:19 a.m., the lights flickered in a pattern, one by one, from the far end of the platform to where I stood. Like dominoes tipping toward me. Then silence. I turned, expecting the tall thing again. Instead, I saw Leonard. He was clearer now. More solid. Standing about 10 feet away, one hand raised as if to warn me back. His mouth moved. No sound came out. But I could read his lips. Don't follow. Don't open the door. He pointed toward the tunnel. The one that had been padlocked since the 80s. Except now. It was open. The chains were on the ground, twisted like they'd been snapped by something strong and impatient. The door itself hung ajar, darkness pulsing behind it like a heartbeat. And from that blackness, a voice echoed, not Leonard's. Not mine. You heard us. You came. You belong. Every instinct screamed to run. But my feet moved forward. Past Leonard. Past the door. Into the dark. It felt like stepping through a membrane, moist, cold, and impossibly quiet. My flashlight flickered once, then died. But I could still see. Somehow. The tunnel sloped downward, deeper than any infrastructure map showed. The walls were lined with old equipment, rusted tools, and what looked like photos. Dozens of them. Black and white staff portraits nailed to the walls like wallpaper. Some faces were scratched out. Others had been burned, eyes blackened into soot. I recognized one. It was me. I stared at the photo. It was definitely me, same uniform, same crooked name patch, same tired eyes. But the picture looked old, like it had been sitting here for decades. The edges were yellowed, the ink bleeding into the paper like veins. And underneath, someone had scribbled something in red marker, jagged and urgent. Stay below. I tore the photo off the wall and shoved it in my pocket, heart pounding. Every instinct screamed that I was too far in. This wasn't just a forgotten tunnel anymore. This place was something else, outside the rules of time and concrete. I turned to leave, but the tunnel had changed. It was longer now. Wider. And I wasn't alone. There were figures ahead, shadows moving in and out of the gloom, pacing like guards on a forgotten shift. Some walked like people. Some crawled. One dragged itself along the ceiling, head cocked at an impossible angle, its arms twitching like puppet strings. I backed against the wall, breath locked in my chest. A low, grinding voice came from somewhere to my left, just above a broken pipe. We don't sleep. We wait. The temperature dropped. My skin prickled like frostbite. I started walking. Fast, but not running. Something told me if I ran, they'd chase. As I moved, I passed more photos. Some were torn, others crossed out violently. I saw familiar faces, co-workers, a shift supervisor from another line, even the clerk from City Records who'd helped me pull the files. All marked. All below. And then I heard the dragging again. Slow. Heavy. Closer now. I ducked into a side passage, an old storage area with busted generators and hanging wires. I pressed myself behind a collapsed locker and waited. The thing came into view. It wasn't the tall figure from before. This one was broader, like a maintenance worker, but its body was twisted, bent backward at the waist. It walked with its spine arched up and over, like an upside-down U, head dangling between its legs, mouth wide open. I could hear it breathing, deep, wet, searching. It sniffed the air like it knew I was there. And then it whispered. One more shift. Something metallic clattered behind me. The thing snapped upright, bones popping, and turned in a single, fluid motion. It saw me. And it smiled. It rushed me. No delay. No warning. Just a blur of twisted limbs and snapping joints barreling straight at the locker I was behind. I dove to the side as the metal caved in with a shriek, pieces flying like shrapnel. My flashlight was long dead, but in that moment, I didn't need light. I could feel where it was. The air shifted around it. Every movement sucked something out of the room. Heat, hope, reason. I scrambled to my feet, running down the tunnel, back the way I thought I came. But the space had changed again. Doors that weren't there before lined the walls. Old staff doors, half-rotted, with rusted labels. Break room. Records office. Time clock. That last one made me stop. The door was cracked open, and inside I saw a faint red glow, like an old exit sign. I pushed through and found a room. Completely intact. Not decayed, not distorted. A vintage timecard machine sat in the center. Next to it, rows and rows of hanging slots filled with name cards. I stepped closer, scanning them. Briggs Leonard. Kowalski D. Gwynn Arthur. Sanders M. And then, your name here. Typed clean, not handwritten. The card looked brand new. As I reached out, the machine chirped. A hollow, mechanical chime that sounded almost cheerful. Please clock in. I stepped back. The locker door behind me slammed shut on its own. From the corner of the room, Leonard appeared again. Closer now. More detailed. But his eyes were wrong. Too wide. Too hollow. He pointed at the card. You saw us. That's enough. I backed toward the door. I didn't ask for this. I didn't. His voice boomed. Louder than before, layered with others, like a chorus of overlapping whispers. You work below now. Suddenly, my pocket burned hot. I pulled out the photo I'd taken from the tunnel wall. The ink was running. My face distorted, the features bleeding outward like melting wax. I dropped it and ran. This time, I didn't look back. I barreled through doors, down tunnels, tripping, bleeding, clawing my way toward anything that looked like daylight. Behind me, voices echoed through the concrete. Clock in. Clock in. Stay below. I don't know how long I ran. But eventually, I saw the stairs. The real ones. The platform. My control room. Everything exactly as I'd left it. I collapsed on the floor, gasping, soaked in sweat and grime. The door behind me was gone. Replaced with a flat wall. Just concrete. I didn't leave right away. I should have, I wanted to, but something about that concrete wall, it felt temporary. Like wet cement hardening over a wound. I stayed until the sun came up, huddled in the control room, watching the CCTV feed flicker like a dying flame. Every now and then, the screen would flash, a single frame of someone standing on the empty platform. Always in a different place. Always blurry. I never saw their face. When the relief guard arrived at 6 a.m., I acted normal. Said nothing about the door. Nothing about Leonard. Nothing about the thing with no face and too many joints. What could I say? Hey, the underground tried to recruit me last night. They even made me a name tag. No one would believe it. Instead, I went home, showered with scalding water, and tried to forget. But Lexington didn't forget me. Over the next few days, things followed. My phone would ring at exactly 1:06 a.m. every night. No caller ID, no sound when I picked up. Just that same dragging noise. I unplugged the phone. It kept ringing. The lights in my apartment flickered in perfect succession, like the station had done. Left to right. Always ending above my bed. And worse, I started seeing my photo. Not the one I'd taken from the tunnel. New ones. Taped to my front door. Folded into my mailbox. One slid under my windshield wiper, soaked through with some brown, oily stain. Each had that same phrase written beneath my face. "You belong below." I reported none of it. I didn't want a psych evaluation. I didn't want to be benched, or worse, committed. So I did what felt both impossible and necessary. I went back. A week later, Tuesday night, 10 p.m. sharp, I signed in for my shift at Lexington like nothing had happened. The chains on the tunnel door were back. The control room was untouched. But the air was different. Thicker. Heavy with expectation. And on the log sheet, written in faint, reddish ink, was a message I hadn't written. "Clock in. We missed you." I didn't sign the log. I stared at the message for a long time, hand hovering over the pen, heart jackhammering in my chest. The room was dead silent. No trains, no buzzing lights, not even the hum of the old monitors. The terminal was holding its breath. I decided to walk the platform one last time. Everything looked the same: chip tile, vending machines long out of order, puddles of condensation beneath the pipes. But it felt different. Like the station was watching me. I paused near the tunnel entrance, half expecting it to be open again. It wasn't. Chains intact. Lock still rusted. But taped to the wall beside it, fresh and pristine, was another photo. Me again. This time, I wasn't alone. Behind me, in the photo, stood Leonard. And behind him, a crowd. A dozen figures in outdated uniforms, all with faces too blurred to identify. But all staring in the same direction. Toward me. I ripped the photo down and turned to leave. That's when I saw the train. Completely silent, rolling into the station on track 3. No headlights. No announcements. Just gliding into place like it had been waiting. The doors opened with a hiss. Inside was nothing. No conductor. No passengers. Just dim seats and flickering lights. I should have run. I knew that. But my feet moved on their own. I stepped inside. And the moment I did, the doors slammed shut. The train began to move backward. Down the line. Into tunnels I didn't recognize. No signs. No lights. Just dark corridors and deeper black beyond the windows. And then the voices began. Not spoken, just felt. Pressing against my skull from the inside out. "You saw us. You heard us. You stayed." One by one, the seats around me began to fill. Leonard. The bent thing from the ceiling. The smiling maintenance worker with the broken body. And others, dozens, occupying every seat, every shadow. All watching me. Silent. The train slowed. And stopped. The doors opened. Outside, there was no station. Just a vast concrete hall stretching forever, walls covered in photos. Portraits like mine, hundreds, maybe thousands. Above the platform hung a single, rusted sign. "Welcome to Last Shift Terminal." And a timecard machine. Still running. Still waiting. I didn't scream. I didn't run. I stepped off. And clocked in.